Welcome, everybody, as you all come into the room to the A. Richard Newton Distinguished Innovator Lecture Series, a Berkeley Changemaker course. I am thrilled to have a fireside chat this evening with two Cal grads. They'll be introduced in just one moment as we start to gather everybody into the room. As you are gathering, I'll put up what we'll cover today. Let me just go back again. I'm very excited about our speakers this evening. One thing that no one really knows in this class is that we really don't repeat speakers very much, except for Jessica Ma. She's always the exception to the rule. So we'll hear a little bit more about Jessica's background and Shervin's, and we're lucky enough that both Francesca and Nishi will be doing introductions. Just like we usually do, we'll start at 10 after the hour, which is in 1 minute, with our student speaker introductions. They will continue to be fantastic. And then Jessica will take it away with Shervin and talk a little bit about his journey, insights. Shervin, if you all haven't realized that, is a renowned VC advisor and more. And then with our time, we'll aim to at about 10 of 6, a little bit before 6, go into the Q&A portion. So don't forget to put your questions ideally into the Q&A portion, but I'll keep an eye on the chat as well. And then we'll post our quiz at the end. One thing that you may realize is that one of our speakers happens to find himself in the airport, which has all sorts of challenges. So be aware there may be a slight change in our schedule based on flight schedules. With that, it is now 10 after the hour. We're at about 150 participants, and I know we'll have more join us, but I don't want to take a second away from our time together. Both Francesca and Nishi have kindly agreed and asked to introduce our speakers. So Francesca, I'll let you go ahead and start and introduce one of our speakers today.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Francesca Greco, and I'm currently attending my last term of IOR. Actually, I'm from Polytechnic of Milan, Italy, and I'm here at the SCET Center for Studying Entrepreneurship and Leadership. I'm thrilled to introduce Jessica Ma. She's the CEO of inDinero. She started her first business in 2001. By the age of 11, she taught herself how to code, and she graduated from UC Berkeley in computer science when she was only 19. She raised a seed fund of $1 million for her inDinero idea at the accelerator Y Combinator, and she's received press coverage also in Forbes 30 Under 30. Her passions and hobbies include mentoring up-and-coming entrepreneurs and encouraging young girls to take on STEM pathways. And she's also a commercial pilot license, and she's qualified to fly in multiple jet aircraft. So everybody, feel free, pleased and honored to welcome on stage Jessica Ma.
Whoop, whoop. Nishi, I'll let you go ahead too.
Awesome. Thank you, Francesca and Victoria. Hello, everyone. My name is Nishi, and I'm majoring in data science here at Berkeley. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Shervin Pishevar, an entrepreneur, a venture capitalist, and a former Cal grad. After his time at UC Berkeley, Pishevar has started many companies, including Social Gaming Network and Webs.com, which sold to Vistaprint for $117.5 million. Afterwards, he joined Menlo Ventures as an investing partner, where he and Menlo Ventures came across Uber and Tumblr amongst the other startup companies at the time. Pishevar was initially turned down by Uber during the second round of funding when he got a call from former Uber CEO Travis Kalanick a few days later during his talk in Algeria, asking him if he's still interested in investing in Uber in Dublin, Ireland. So Pishevar took the next flight out to Dublin, and the rest is history. His most important lesson through it all, get on that plane. Yeah. Along with Uber, Shervin has gone on to accomplish many, many feats, including holding the titles of co-founder and former executive chairman at Hyperloop One and lead investor, strategic advisor, and former board observer at Uber. Shervin has also invested in some of the most recognizable and successful companies today, including Postmates, Lyft, Airbnb, Slack, and more. And with that, I would like to welcome Shervin Pishevar.
Thank you. Hey, Jess. Hey, what's up?
What's
Excited to be
up?
here. It's funny.
Good
I
meeting you.
actually attended this class when I was an undergrad at Cal, and I'm excited to do this fireside chat with you, Shervin, because you were my mentor and hero when I was going through Cal. It's just really cool to have you here. So thanks for offering to do this with us.
Be careful, you're gonna make me cry.
I love you.
That's full circle for sure. Like I know there's more Jess Ma's in the audience tonight. So, I've always really just loved our relationship, and I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished. I've watched you since you were 19, and if I had an impact on you in a talk back then, I hope to have the same kind of impact on a woman or a man that's in the audience listening tonight. So
it's amazing. Yeah, well, you have had quite a crazy history to get to where you are today. And so I'm wondering if you could start with your background, your childhood and how you decided to go to Cal. And then while we start with that, and then I'd love to ask you about your experience when you were at Cal.
Absolutely. If we were going through chapters of my life, this chapter would be anything is possible. And I was born in Tehran, Iran, and I want to dedicate this talk to all of the young women who are bravely fighting for their freedom in Iran right now, my birthplace, and the young men who are supporting their fight for freedom. So many of them have already died. And now there is talk of executing the 15,000 who are in prison right now, which is genocidal. It's unbelievable. And hopefully the world will stop the evil that's happening there and give these young people their freedom. So with that, I was born there, and I was 2 years old when my dad got a scholarship to come to America to get his master's degree. And, and we came to America in 1976. So it was when I was 2. When he finished his master's, it was 1978. So really bad timing to go back to Iran. But that's exactly when we went back, right before the revolution. My dad was promoted. He was under the Shah's time, and he was promoted to head of radio and television for most of the country. Then he bravely, when the revolution started to heat up, put foreign language broadcasts on Iranian radio and television, let people know from their embassies like how to get out of the country. He later, I found out in one of my talks, that people came up to me and said, "Your father saved our family's lives and helped them escape." So he's so humble about it. He hadn't talked about it with us, but we found out that he had, on basically an underground railroad style, had helped a bunch of people escape. And so because of the things he was doing, my dad was put on the execution list. Basically, shoot to kill as soon as they find him. And so one morning when I was like about 4.5 or so, I heard my brother, who's 6 years older, crying, and I don't remember him crying a lot. He's a tough kid, and I woke up to him crying, and it was like 4 or 5 in the morning. And my dad had been in hiding for 10 months or so. So we didn't see him because he would move from house to house. So he would evade the regime, and he had come to say goodbye. And he didn't know if he was going to see us again. So my brother was crying. My sister was there. We were hugging him, and not knowing when we were going to see him again. So in that story, there's a lesson in that as well, because the person who helped my dad escape was someone that my dad had hired, who came from a poor family and had needed a break. And my dad gave him a job. He was from his hometown, and then someone fired the guy. My dad found out and rehired him and said, "No one can touch this guy," protected him. And then when he was in hiding, this person showed up at our house to my mom and said, like, hey, I can help your husband escape. I know him well. He's, you know, and she didn't trust it. So she was like, she closed the door. And then when they did speak, she asked about it, and he was like, no, that guy is legitimate. You can talk to him. And so he had come back again. And that night at the airport, this guy, it turns out that my dad helped. His family was like from a religious family, so he had actually gotten like a job heading security at the airport. So very similar to Argo, my dad showed up at the airport and was like taken from with that guy around security and onto the Air France flight to get out. And at the last second, security came on the plane. He thought it's over, and they took someone two rows away from him off the plane. And my dad, you know, was crying and not knowing when he's going to see his family when they took off. And we didn't see him for almost 2 years before we escaped. My mom, dad, and sister and brother, and reunited with him in Washington, D.C., where he was driving. You know, nobody would hire him in television because he was Iranian. It was during the Iranian hostage crisis. And he was driving a cab, you know, to make it. And my mom, who was a teacher for 14 years, you know, we came with $35 in our pocket to America. And my mom, you know, was a maid. So I'd go to the hotel with her when I was a kid. And she's cleaning rooms. And I was in the taxi with my dad. And ironically, years later, when I did Uber, as you know, invested in it early, that history actually helped me understand the opportunity that was at hand. So anyways, we came to America, and we were poor. We had nothing except love. And you know, every night my dad would come home at like 10 p.m. from a long shift. I mean, he'd work, you know, 14 hours a day to put food on the table and pay the rent. And my mom was this amazing Persian cook. If you like Persian food, she would cook a feast, and we would be on the floor because in Iranian culture you have what's called a sofra. It's like a blanket on the floor, and we would eat around this circular sofra. And years later, to my mentor, I said, you know, whatever success happens now, I'm still yearning and searching for what I experienced around that sofra, which was just pure love and family and connection. So years later, I actually named our family office fund Sofra Capital. So that's where that name comes from. But yeah, we came here. I didn't know English. I was put in ESL, or ESOL was what we called it, English for speakers of other languages, and you know, had an initial run of like 2 years of just trying to figure out where I am and how to talk, and then got into gifted and talented, and then got tested and got into a magnet school that was for communications, and then also math and science magnet at the same school. And that's when I saw a Next computer. It's when I, you know, begged my dad for an Apple IIc and my mom for an Apple IIc. And my dad worked extra hours because the Apple IIc was like $3,000 back then, which was a lot of money in today's dollars. And so he worked 3 months, like double shifts, and then surprised me with the Apple IIc. And that computer changed my life. I wrote a letter to Steve Jobs with a new design for a Macintosh. And years later, when I met him, I told him that story. And I was like, I'm still waiting for my response to my letter. But yeah, I mean, it just like my parents just focused on education as the way upwardly. Like they really pushed that education was the way to freedom, and that no one, they always said it, no one can take away your education. They can take away everything you have, but they can't take the knowledge that you've earned for your studies. And that's why I have such a soft spot for Cal, because Cal, along with the Apple IIc, changed my life, and I'll get to my experience at Berkeley soon. But I just hit the books. My brother, sister, and I, we studied. My brother became a lawyer. My sister's a PhD and professor. She was tenured professor, I think, by the time she was 30. And then later she joined me as chief of staff and chief operating officer. And yeah, so I was the rebel. I was supposed to go to medical school. That every Persian family wants a doctor. And I, broke their hearts, because at Berkeley, I saw the browser for the first time, NCSA Mosaic, when it came out in 1994. And to describe Cal at that time, wow, like it was an amazing period of transition between what I call the old world and the new world that we're in. But I'll pause there because I've been talking for a while.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing all that. And holy cow, what a wild upbringing. Yeah, could you talk more about, like, what did you study at Cal? What were you fascinated by? Did you work a lot of companies in college, or were you not yet on the entrepreneurial path?
That's a great question. So I always knew, like, I wanted to start a genetics company. I was like 10 years old. I was that kid that was like, I'm going to go to medical school. I'm going to get an MD, PhD. I had like a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan. And I was like, I'll go to medical school. I'll get to PhD. Then I'll start a genetics company. Then I'll cure cancer. And I'll, it's like, I'll win a Nobel Prize for medicine. Like, that's the level of like insanity there was. And what was going on in my little kid brain was just, I was sucking in as much knowledge as I could. There wasn't an internet, so I convinced my bus driver to drop me off at the county library every day instead of my house. He later got in trouble for that, because I would go to the library from school, and magnet school already was like 8 periods extra hours at school. Then I would stay in the library until 9:30 at night, and I read every single book I could get my hands on. And that was my internet. Like, the library was my World Wide Web. And that was when we had the Dewey Decimal System and not HTTP. But so when I went to Berkeley, to answer your question, I did the ISF major. Shout out to anyone who's ISF, interdisciplinary field studies. And so you had to write a proposal for your own major, and you design your own major, but you had to write a thesis. So already Berkeley was hard enough. I'm like, let's torture myself even more, and I got to write a 100-page thesis. But I remember I think it was Dr. Kane, Kane, if anyone has any history there, and she was the head of that program. And I was just a research nerd. So I wanted to mix molecular cell biology with international studies, because I knew I wanted to do both things in my life. I wanted to be of service and like learn how to cure cancer. like really small goals. And it was just, I don't know, it was an amazing environment. 1994 at Cal was like the last remaining days of pre-internet. Like, literally, it was like, just imagine a world where there's no cell phones, there's no internet, and it's the last moment of it. Like, literally the last year before the world completely changed. Like, we look at the pandemic, we're like, wow, the world changed in 2 years. Imagine a technology coming that would change our lives today, which I'll get to, because we're living in the most exciting time in human history. And I'm going to get you guys really jazzed and pumped up about why someday you're going to be like, when I was at Berkeley, the world is going to change. And you don't yet know exactly what it's going to be, but I've got some clues, and we'll talk about signals and so on. But man, Berkeley was this just beautiful place that reminded me of Hogwarts. Like, it was like the best professors who really cared. I don't know if you guys know Dr. Tyrone Hayes. He was the first like African-American professor, Harvard grad, and PhD from Berkeley. He was my mentor. So he was a researcher. They would use frogs, and I got to tell you, like, I've got a bond with frogs. When I was a little kid, my family's probably laughing hearing this story later. But I would collect frogs, turtles, salamanders everywhere as a kid. I'd put them in the bathtub. My mom would yell and scream at me. And years later, I actually, like in high school, started a research project around frogs and salamanders, and I found a peptide called meganin, which in Hebrew means shield. And it was a 23 amino acid peptide. And in high school, I read this article that this guy, Dr. Michael Zasloff, had discovered this peptide from these frogs, and African clawed frogs, Xenopus laevius. And he basically was doing surgery, taking out the ovaries of these frogs, putting them back in dirty water, and all the other frogs were dying except Xenopus laevius, African clawed frog, which is like the lab rat of frogs, by the way. They have like red eyes, they're albino, they've been bred just for research, just like the mice. And they weren't dying. So he was like, what's protecting it? And discovered a new class of peptides. In my like 14, 15-year-old brain, I was like, aha, I remember I would pick up salamanders and they would drop their tails to run away. They would unhinge their tails. And I was like, then they regrow their tails. They have to have something protecting them from infection. And that was when I first got my first like awards in science. And at Berkeley, I continued the research on meganin and Dr. Tyrone Hayes, and I would go around finding frogs all over California. We'd go in the deserts, in the forests, and it was like I had my dream situation. I could do all the research I wanted. I had a supply of frogs, like, to do all my research, and suddenly the internet was happening, and that excitement started to take over campus. It's kind of probably similar to how people felt when Facebook was launched at Harvard, where like, oh my God, I can connect with my friends. And this was like, oh my God, I can connect with the world. Like, that, what? And so anyways, Berkeley funded my research. Berkeley filed a patent on my research, my meganin patent. I found I had another aha moment thanks to the early versions of the internet, where I started to do research, and I figured out that basically malaria, when it infects a human red blood cell, it actually changes the red blood cell in a way that this peptide actually would be attracted to it, like a heat-seeking missile. So I actually tagged the peptide with immunofluorescence, and at LBL, they gave me human blood cell samples. They gave me the ability to actually make the peptide using PCR. I had literally, it was Hogwarts. I could do anything at this place. Like Berkeley was like, here's LBL, here's this, and then they filed a patent. And because they filed a patent, they had a technology licensing office, and this woman who was amazing, was my kind of case officer. And so she hired Cooley Godward, and that's where I actually met the first business mentor of mine, who was like, hey, Shervin, you could start a company around this. And I was like, really? And so they guided me after Berkeley filed a patent of how I could start a company. And that's what led to my entrepreneurship. So Berkeley had its hand all over any kind of beginning story I had as an entrepreneur.
Wow, that's incredible. It's crazy. We've never talked about this, Shervin.
This is the first time I've fully actualized expressing how important Cal was to my life. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty mind-boggling and incredible. So you graduated from Cal, then what?
Let's see. So first I had to write my thesis. So I was like, why did I pick ISO? So basically I was a senior, and my dad and my mom were like, oh, I published in JAMA, by the way, when I was 19. it was another thing that I did at Berkeley. The Physicians for Human Rights was there. And I opened the Physician for Human Rights like club, basically. And a bunch of pre-meds and I got together and we're like, we're gonna like also care about human rights. And so met a mentor there who was one of the heads of PHR. And they were doing research in Turkey on human rights abuses. And so I actually published a paper at Cal on in JAMA. So my parents were like, hey, he's gonna like go to Harvard Medical School. He's got a patent on malaria. I had checked all the boxes. I was like, patent on malaria. I founded Berkeley Scientific, which is still going, by the way. I don't know if you guys have seen Berkeley Scientific, the journal. I started that in 1995. Like literally knew nothing about publishing a physical magazine and like licensed this software to actually publish it, gathered a bunch of students who wanted to go to medical school, and we started Berkeley Scientific, interviewed Dr. Glenn Seaborg, which is like, if you know what Glenn Seaborg was, he was the original OG of nuclear science. Like this guy was genius of geniuses. He had two, I think he won the Nobel Prize, and he has like seaborgium and like 5 other elements that he named. And then he's the only living human that ever had an element named after him. That's what a badass he was. And he was like the coolest guy. He was like 6'5", and I got to hang with him. And he passed like maybe, I don't know, 4 years later, and we did a cover story about him in Berkeley Scientific. And he was so sweet and so kind and of his time. And anyways, I have so many Berkeley stories. There was Dr. Volhart, who wrote the organic chemistry book. Do you guys remember him? Is he still there? Dr. Volhart teaches the organic chemistry class, and he drove a Ferrari. I swear to God, like he had a red Ferrari, and he had gotten a patent. He helped develop the birth control pill. Like he literally invented key parts of the birth control pill in like the 60s or something. And so he got rich off the patents, and he loved chemistry. So he taught organic chemistry at Berkeley and drove in a Ferrari. Anyways, I've got so many stories I want to tell you.
Wow. Okay. I can't wait to hear even more next time we hang. So I mean,
sorry, I was just setting up the stage to, starting my first company. I was like, sorry, I lost my train of thought with Dr. Volhart. And so basically, I had set up everything to go to medical school, and I like decided I have to start a company, and basically, I had told my parents like, hey, I'm really sorry, but I'm not going to apply to medical school. I'm going to start a company senior year of college. And my dad did not talk to me for a year. And you know what I'm saying? He's my best friend to this day, lives with me, he's 84, walks 6 miles a day. And we talk all the time. And he literally stopped talking to me for a year. He was like, you are giving up the American dream. I was like, this is my dream. Like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And so I did it. I worked at night as a security guard for Blackhawk Security. My mom secretly bought the LG device, the laptop that I could like use where I was doing security. I was dialing in at night with my co-founder to start the company. And I just worked 24/7 trying to start a company that was called WebOS, which means Web Operating System. And I can touch on what that is, and if you'd like me to. We'll pause
yeah, share what that is a little bit more.
Oh, so WebOS was the first. Well, let me set it up. When I saw the browser NCSA Mosaic, I still remember in the computer lab at Berkeley when I went in and I saw NCSA Mosaic, and I went on the internet for the first time, which is like a life-changing moment. I don't know if I could, what would be the example for your generation of something like that? I guess maybe the iPhone, and the App Store, and like seeing something completely new. But for us, it was the actual World Wide Web and the internet to begin with. And and I had been reading since I was a kid, books, every book I can get on Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Larry Ellison. Like I knew everything about their stories, and I looked up to them. And so for me, when I saw the browser, I suddenly realized that all software, this entire software model is completely changed forever. Everything's going to go, this is before people called it the cloud. So we were the first company to build a web operating system that would allow you to architect apps through the browser. We would cache code. This is a dial-up, like AOL dial-up, by the way. And so you didn't have a lot of bandwidth. So my hack around that was to cache the code in the browser and process that locally on your computer while getting the least amount of information needed at the time to keep the experience going. So we literally built a Windows environment through the browser. So we would open up a desktop, you'd have drag and drop through the internet, you'd have a file system, all the things that you're used to now, but this is when it didn't exist. So we literally had to invent it while we were doing it. And I literally went all over the world recruiting the top HTML, JavaScript programmers in the world, and they were all young. Like I say young, and I'm like 22, and they were 18, and they were 17, and they were 19, they were 14, like young programmers in Sweden and in Canada and in America and all over the world. But I found the top ones, and that's when I first realized, hold on a second. It was my first experience where I realized I'm a really good recruiter. And I'm going to come back to this. Like, I can recruit anyone. Like you tell me to recruit someone, I will recruit them. I for whatever reason, it was a talent, and having an eye for talent was really important. Like, who is actually recruitable and worthy of being recruited? Like, who are the geniuses in our world that you want to associate yourself with and build companies with? And so of those people, let me describe what happened. This became an incubator of talent. I hired Anthony Castellana when he was 15 years old. He was my second hire at WebOS. Anthony was 15 and nobody would have hired him. And I literally like met him right there. It was like, do you want to come work for me? I gave him a real salary. He later wanted to start his own idea. And that idea was Squarespace. So he's like 17 years old, 18 years old. And he's like, I have this idea called Squarespace. And I'm like, here's a server, like start it, like go. Like he literally started on one of our servers. And I advised him for years, and we're best friends today. He just turned 40. He's a multi-billionaire, and he has a heart of gold. And so that was my second hire. The first hire was Zeki Mokhtarzada, and he had 3 brothers. I met him through his sister when I emailed my alumni group at the magnet school, and I was like, hey, I'm starting a company. And she was like, talk to my brother, Zeki, he's 18. So I hired Zeki, and Zeki and his brothers, then I hired Idris, who was like 12. There was this little brother who was like genius. It turns out they had an idea called webs.com. And they were like, we want to start that. So I helped them. That was Free Webs, and now that's Vistaprint. So so I literally, like, my first 2 hires, boom, boom. It was like, these incredible talents, and the rest of them are like the other 2 Swedes. They ended up writing Gmail, like it was ridiculous. And so for me, it was that experience of like awakening, and it took years for me to like piece together what my superpowers are. And this is one thing I want to talk to you all about, is like, you have to figure out what is your superpower and focus on your superpower. Because I'm sorry, if you don't figure out what your superpower is, you're not going to develop some superpower from scratch. It's not going to, like, if your talent for like, writing essays is like your third talent, it's not your superpower, you probably shouldn't become a writer, like it's like, why hit your head against the wall for the rest of your life trying to be a writer if you know it's not your superpower. If your superpower is to be an entrepreneur, then focus on that. Start a company the way Jess did.
So after WebOS, how long was it before you ended up on the investing side of things? Because you were building companies, you were operating for a while. When I met you in 2010, I think, or 2009, when I first called you.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't know how I got in touch with Shervin. Either I cold emailed him or something. And I just remember being blown away because Shervin was willing to talk to me. And I was, this is my first year at Cal, and we're just like I'm walking around in front of iHouse and Shervin's mentoring me. So back then you were still building, but I'm wondering if you talk about that transition from running things to investing.
I want to know what our first conversation was like. Do you remember?
I mean, I just remember how I felt. I remember feeling really like appreciative and grateful, and yeah, you're just giving me encouragement to, I think, not take a real job and just go start a company.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like me. I'm probably telling everyone that's listening, like, it's very, oh wow, something just came up.
Yeah.
This timeline is amazing.
I just thought it was interesting
timeline
to see what you were doing. You were doing Jam City and HyperOffice while Jess was in school.
Wow, this is so cool. This is like two different timelines in space and time.
It has such a small portion of everything both of you all have done.
That's so cool. I love it.
I have it in the background. I'll let you keep talking. I just thought it was interesting to see what was going on when you were talking about 2007 or 8.
I love it. Very cool.
Yeah.
What were we talking about? Because
we were talking about your transition from running companies to investing.
Oh, so I think what's funny is, while I was starting companies, because I just I had so many ideas. I always keep idea books even to this day, like with hundreds of ideas. I'll have a new idea every day. So I literally called myself Chief Idea Officer, and I got the domain chiefideaofficer.com when in my 20s. And then while I was starting companies, I would like try to find other entrepreneurs, because I didn't have any money. Like I was still poor, and I was like, I can't invest in anything, but my brain has some value. Like I'll become an advisor, I'll help. And the funny thing was, like, when you haven't made it and you don't have any money and you try to convince someone that your brain is valuable, they're like, really? Like, no one believes you. You got to have a track record, right? And so, but I kept trying, and I wouldn't take no for an answer. I was like, I have to help other people start companies, which is how I helped Anthony, which is how I helped Zeki and Idris and his brothers start their first company. Basically, when I didn't have any liquidity and I didn't have enough money, I was just trying to make it. And so I started to advise some people, but it really took until when I first had any amount of money. Like literally, I started to angel invest around 2007 with like $5,000 checks. And I'm telling you, like 2007, I didn't have any money. Like I was a single dad raising 2 little kids while starting my companies. So like, when people tell me how busy they are, I want to see someone. I have so much respect for any single parents out there, because raising my daughter was like, Daria was like, a year old and a baby Bjorn, I had a baby Bjorn with a milk bottle while I was doing a business plan. Like, so I had to raise 2 kids, start multiple companies, and somehow try to make it. And in 2007, I was still trying to make it, right? I didn't have enough money to call myself an angel investor, but I took whatever amount of money I had and I would write $5,000 checks, $10,000 checks, which is a lesson to anyone. You don't need to have a lot of money to be able to like try to invest something. If you're interested in being an angel investor, like start small, which is probably a good idea because your first ideas are probably not going to work out. But it's possible to invest with very little amount of money. But that's really the transition that happened. And then I can tell a story of the venture stuff after.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you talk about some of your bigger deals you got involved with. Uber, for example, was a big hit and you were super active. How did you get involved with that? And how did you meet Travis and
Sure.
that journey like?
Well, I should probably tell how I became a VC first, because that's an important step. Social gaming network, that handy timeline is here, you know, if you follow that. Social gaming network, SGN was my first, like one of my first companies, and it happened because at FreeWebs, we were focused on FreeWebs, and then I was friends with Matt Kohler. And so Matt Kohler, who was at Facebook at the time, he was at LinkedIn before that, he like invited me. We had a conversation at this thing called the Dialogue, and it was like a gathering of techie nerds.
Oh, you still good at that, by the way?
Huh?
You still go to Dialogue?
I just went 2 years ago. It's like a total reunion thing.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And so basically he invited me. Well, I told him, I said, look, I think Facebook is the web operating system that I was trying to build. I was like, it is the web OS, except it's a social operating system. It was called Dialogue, is the conference, Catherine. And DIALOG. Basically when I said that, he was like, don't tell anyone, but we're working on it, and we're gonna, like, I'll invite you to the first like event. And so literally at F8, Fate, the first F8, I was there with programmers from FreeWebs that I brought with me. And so we built 2 or 3 like apps. Like, I don't know if you remember on MySpace, there was like glitter stuff on MySpace that you could customize. And so we did like a glitter thing for Facebook. And before you couldn't have any apps on Facebook. So they were basically building the app store for Facebook. And so to me, it was one of those moments in life where you're like, again, like the browser, something big was happening. You have to find the signal in the noise. And for me, that was like, we need to be building apps for Facebook. So we did, and we built a game for Facebook called Warbook. And Warbook was like a real-time strategy game, and it blew up, and we were making like $100,000 a month, and we were like, wait, what just happened? And that was just 100,000 in ads. And then people were selling Warbook Gold on eBay. So, and I kept telling the programmers, like, you need to launch the ability to sell the gold in the game, this first kind of microtransactions. He wouldn't do it. And then there was a kid that I hired. I had like I had a whole strategy of like how to advertise to find the kind of brains that I look for. And so I would hone it, and I found this guy named Dave Maestri. So Dave Maestри's sitting there, and I took him to Korea to teach him about gaming. And then he was like 18, and he's watching me argue with this guy about launching, you know, gold to sell. And he's like, I'll just do it myself. So he quietly did Mob Wars. So Mob Wars is what started Mafia Wars, which is a thing that's copied. And was inspired by, and that started the revolution of what people call social gaming, and it changed gaming forever. And then when the iPhone came out was my other moment of F8, and went all in on iPhone apps and games and so on. By the way,
So-
we should tell the story of how I got here.
Yeah.
Get on a plane, because I literally have to get on a plane soon. But one of my mantras that Justin and I have talked about is get on a plane, get on the plane. And the Uber story, I was chasing Uber as a freshman, basically rookie VC, my first year at Menlo. And it was on my list of companies I really wanted to get to. And I had a list of ones like Airbnb, Tumblr, etc. And basically started chasing Uber, and I lost it. I lost a deal to another firm. It was actually a really great firm, Andreessen Horowitz, but I didn't know who was my competition. And Travis called me. It was like, "Hey, homie," he would call me homie, and it was like, "Hey, homie, I really want to do this with you, but I can't. I gotta go with this other firm." And I was like, "Look, I understand. Go ahead, and just know, like, I'm 100,000% behind you. If anything goes wrong in diligence, I'm your backup. Like, I'm there." And he was like, "I appreciate that." And then 2 weeks later, I was giving a speech in Algeria for President Obama's Entrepreneurship Summit. And my phone rings, this unknown number, and I pick it up. It's Travis, and he's like, "Hey, you remember what you told me? Is that still true?" I'm like, "Absolutely, it's true." He's like, "Can you get on a plane and come to Dublin, Ireland, and meet me tomorrow?" I'm like, "Sure." I'm like, and I got on the plane. That was a life-changing moment, because if I hadn't gotten on the plane, if I thought it was inconvenient, it's like, who is this crazy founder telling me to come meet him in Dublin? And I did. We hit the cobblestone streets of Dublin and had a pint, and he shared the full vision of Uber. And I wrote the term sheet that, like, as soon as we got back to the hotel, I wrote it, came back to his room, I have a picture of us outside his hotel room with the signature. And I won that deal because I was hustling, and I would get on the plane. And that became a mantra for me and my teams. And I say it to you guys today, literally, I'm in a phone booth at the airport at JFK. I landed, just knows this, at 7 p.m. and I have a 18-hour flight, like 18-hour travel flight in a plane that I'm about to go to the gate. And I had to get on a train when I got to the gate. What was it, Terminal 8? I had to get to Terminal 4. It's really big airport. It's like a city. And make it here by 8 o'clock to do this talk with you guys, then get on the plane, because I'm chasing a dream. And I'm meeting with investors, and I'm speaking at Milken conference in Abu Dhabi. So I'm going to UAE. And I'll kind of leave it at, the reason that I'm chasing this dream, I'm 48 years old, I'm hustling, is that I'm just as excited about the world as I was when I saw that browser at Berkeley. I'm even more excited about where we're going in the next 20 to 25 years. Your generation is one of the luckiest generations of all time. You're literally going to see so much of our civilization change in the next 25 years, and you're going to be leading those changes. Someday, 20 years from now, we're going to meet those Jess Ma's that were in the audience tonight, and we're gonna hear how their lives were changed by Jess and her inspiring story. And I hope I've excited you guys, because I'm telling you that the innovations I'm seeing coming, we're going to cure every disease known to mankind. No one is going to die of disease naturally anymore. We're going to just die of accidents. Okay. And so no more suffering of losing our loved ones to diseases that just should not exist anymore. We're smart enough to cure it. Our idea of nation states and these silly wars that are happening, all of those are all going to go away. Mars is going to get colonized in our lifetime. Elon's going to get us there. And And quantum computing is going to change everything, like bigger than the internet. Like I just took D-Wave public for our SPAC, you know, and I raised $300 million with Emil Michael for our SPAC DPCM. And we did a quantum computing company. We took it public, D-Wave, the oldest quantum computing company there is. And I believe quantum computing is going to change so much about our lives. And the reason is, literally, I've seen technologies that are going to take us to 1 million qubits. We're at like 5,000 qubits right now. We're going to go to 1 million qubits. That's the power of God. We're going to be able to solve problems that would take us 1 billion years to solve. With our current compute resources, we're going to solve it in days and hours. What does that mean? You're going to be able to design any kind of drug to cure every disease known to mankind over the next 25 to 30 years. And then that's just one area of our lives that's going to change. And, you know, all of these changes and all of the signal means there should be hope. You should not give in to cynicism. You should not give in to jealousies of anyone else, and just help each other, work together, make your dreams come true. And I know it sounds like a holiday card, but it's true. Like, loyalty and friendship and working together is one of the most beautiful things you can find when you find it. And a lot of times I find in startups that culture of togetherness and family and belonging is something that is life-changing. So anyways,
You're amazing, Shervin. I know you got to catch your flight, so we're gonna let you go here. But this is absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for speaking with everyone. And is there a way for people to get in touch with you if they want to reach out or send you questions?
Yeah. Let me turn off my alarm. Yeah, it's Shervin at Edison.co. Edison's my new venture fund. So anyone that wants to you know, get into venture, learn how to start a company, etc., Edison's going to be my vehicle of how I do the next 20 years of my life. And yeah, you can contact me there. I'm available, just as I was suggest. It might take us a little time to schedule, but we'll get there.
Amazing. All right. Thank you, Shervin. Have a great flight. And
all right, let's get on the
I'll see you
plane,
in Miami
everyone.
soon.
All right.
All
Cheers.
right. Bye.
Bye.
And Vicky, let me know if there's anything else you want support on.
I have to tell you, Shervin, I've never seen so many people, like you can see, like with their hands and with the hearts, and it's lovely. I am hoping, Jess, that you can stay on with us a little bit, and we can go to some Q&A and bring some people on the panel.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I think the first thing I want to say before we go into some Q&A here is that when I was at Cal, I cold emailed and reached out to so many random people. And I invited them to speak to the CS students. And that was my hack for building these connections and relationships. And just having
talk about that, like in particular, like what you would do.
I would, let's see. So one of my favorite speakers was Drew, who started Dropbox. And what I did was I emailed him and I said, hey, you need to recruit programmers from Berkeley, right? Well, why don't you speak to the students and buy us pizza? So I got Zachary's Pizza or Cheese Board, depending on, you know, the week for like 100 kids. And then I said, all right, cool. Let's go to dinner after you give your talk. So then I had one-on-one time with him. And I did this with Sam Altman. He started OpenAI and became president of Y Combinator. Luke Nosek, who started PayPal. I mean, a lot of very interesting folks like that. So that's my hack.
I mean, you are the best connector. I know. I think I wrote that in our announcement this week. You just are. You've brought incredible individuals, Nancy, Lou, and Eric Schmidt, and now Shervin Pishevar, and he couldn't have been more lovely. And students, I want to thank you all for your comments also. I think there are some questions that people had, but for Shervin, but I actually think they're appropriate for you as well. And was wondering, Shiv, do you mind if I just go ahead and bring you on and put you on the spot a little bit?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Thank you.
Do you want to put your
this.
camera on, or do you want to be a little more anonymous?
I can try putting my camera on. I just might take a minute.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, my question was just, I wanted to ask really how, well, I think you've gone into this a little bit already in how you connected with, and how you made such a wide network while still in college. But I just want to maybe poke a little bit more on that and sort of ask, like, firstly, how did you find all these people? Like, where did you look to find these people? And not just how you cold email them, but how you got these ideas of setting up talks and reserving space, and also at a personal level, how did you get over maybe feeling anxious about just being a college student and talking to such renowned professionals, and getting over that feeling as well?
Yeah, no, great questions. I actually think now in hindsight, it's easier to find people like Shervin to talk to as a undergrad, because they want to talk to undergrads. They feel like they're so disconnected from college life. It gives them a chance to reflect on their own life. Now, if I call them, it's a lot harder for me to get a meeting if I just email them out of the blue. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, once you get one person to speak, it's easy to get more, because you say, hey, who are your friends who you think would be down to do this? Like, could you recommend 2 or 3 other people? And so Drew from Dropbox, he sent me Sam, and Sam sent me the next person. And that, so it's kind of this infinite loop that like the rich get richer. It's like the same thing here with connections. So Shervin, he was my mentor in college. I called him about random business stuff. We didn't have any friends in common. And then as my career progressed, his career progressed, we lost touch for a few years. And then I became friends with Eric, who was the CEO of Google. And Eric spoke here, I think like a year ago or
2 semesters ago. Yep.
Yeah. And he actually reintroduced me to Shervin because he knew Shervin. And so it's like such a small circle. Everyone knows everyone. But yeah, don't be shy. Just like, I cold emailed so many people. I cold emailed Mark Benioff when I was at Cal, and he replied. And then I got to have a tour through Salesforce and meet with his executives and ask them questions. The CEO of Upwork, I cold emailed, the CEO of StubHub. And I would go to their office and I would meet with the CEO. And my other hack was I put together a blog, and I would take a photo of the office and of the person I was interviewing and write out like my meeting and my takeaways, like what was so interesting about the StubHub story, or why did Upwork become Upwork, and how did they like compete against their other competitors? And then my blog just got so many visitors and upvotes. Like on Hacker News, we were #1 quite a few times. And I had like 80,000 unique visitors a month. And it was just like my side hobby as a, Cal undergrad. So in summary, my hacks were, I was president of the Computer Science Undergrad Association, which gave me an excuse to invite speakers. And then 2, I had my blog, which was another excuse to interview people.
That is fantastic. I have students often ask me how you reach out to somebody. Like, how do you write an email to somebody? Any thoughts on? I have thoughts on how you compose one, but how do you remember what you did to get them to open it?
Mine were okay. So my subject was like questions from Berkeley aspiring entrepreneur or something like that. Like, it wasn't crazy. And then the body was, hey, Shervin, I think you're freaking amazing. I've stalked you on the internet for probably the past 30 hours. And it would be a dream if I could connect with you and, get your advice on how I should think about my entrepreneurial journey. Here's what I'm doing. here is why I'm an impressive college kid in a nutshell. You have to show why you're not just like a random college kid, but why it's worth their time to invest in you. And said, look, I'd be willing to come anywhere to visit you, and buy you a coffee and make it really easy for you.
You just said something that's really important that people don't realize. You start with them. Like, Shervin, you're amazing, in that first sentence. And then it's later you talk a little bit about yourself. And I think people forget that. And you are a master at doing that. Christy, do you want to come on and ask your question?
Yeah, I can do that. First of all, let me do this. Wait. Okay. Yeah, there we go. First of all, thank you so much for being here, Jessica, and moderating that discussion. It was really insightful. And my question to you was, oh, I can't see it, but that's okay. My question was, how do like startup or serial entrepreneurs manage being involved with or even running multiple ventures at the same time? I've noticed it's like a trend among entrepreneurs to be involved with so many different companies and projects. So how does that logistically work?
It is really challenging. So right now, I think I'm overseeing 6 companies. So I'm executive chairman of 3 and controlling owner of 6. And I assign other friends to be on the boards of these companies. So actually, Shervin taught me, because I asked him this like 2 years ago. I'm like, how do you do it, Shervin? Like, what's the secret? And he said, I start with finding someone who could be executive chairman of a company. So someone who's been in that industry or that space. And then he also, after that, he then finds a CEO to run the company. And then he could be on the board, he could help fund it, but he doesn't need to worry about everything day to day. And now there's this whole trend of startup studios that exists, where it's a company that creates companies. And that's essentially what Mawe, which is the holding group I have, does. But I could probably talk for an hour about like how to do this properly. I think it's really important though, before you start multiple companies, to just start one and know how that one company works and have the experience of overseeing dozens of people. And then start your second company and then make sure that second company does well. So during COVID, I started my second company and I just threw in $250,000 of my own money. And now it's like printing money and doing great. But I wasn't sure if it would. So I was kind of like running inDinero while I had a friend running this other company for me. And then it took 2 years before I started company number 3. And then now I have 4, 5, 6. So it's more of an exponential curve.
Thank you.
That's great. Thanks so much, Christy. And I wanted to also thank Shiv. And Veda, do you want to go and ask your question?
Sure. All right. Can you see me?
Let me add you to the spotlight and I'll remove the spotlight for Christy. There you go.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you so much. That was such an insightful, sorry, I'm directly quoting Christy, but I really, really enjoyed hearing everything that Shervin had to say. And I really appreciated some of the questions that you asked. What I was curious about is, what are some unconventional things that you look into when conducting due diligence on investment opportunities? And then I was also wondering, what are some other tips for success you have throughout college, and what really ignited your curiosity with being such a pro networker and talking to so many people? Because I saw that you also started TEDx Berkeley, which is another like learning from different perspectives and trying to speak to as many people as possible. So I just really wanted to know what ignited that curiosity in you with trying to learn from as many people as possible.
Yeah. Okay. So let me start with your question about what to look for in entrepreneurs to invest in. So actually, I also picked up on a lot of this from Shervin. So Shervin, he doesn't think about the market as much or about the business plan. I think the problem with business plan competitions, by the way, I didn't even make it past the first round of the UC Berkeley business plan competition. I didn't make it. I think I lost the 2 times I applied. So I think business plan competitions, like, don't think about it too much. It's all about the founder. Like, does this person hustle, work their butt off, network like crazy, and do they just have a super high inherent IQ? So it's all about the team, and the team will come up with the right idea. They'll pivot the idea, they'll make it work. So I just invest based off team. and the pitch, like I'd say 2/3 of the deals I invest in, like I don't even care about, like I scan through the pitch deck just to know what they're doing, but like I don't really care too much. Your other question about networking, just like how to be successful as a student. I was not the best Cal student. I was probably a straight C student through Cal. If I'm being totally candid here. I could have done better. Like I came in with like a 3.85 GPA, like mostly A's, and then I got obsessed with bringing in speakers and then doing TEDx Berkeley. And then like I stopped really paying attention in class. And there are pros and cons to that. I think what I optimize for is networking and meeting people and getting ideas. And if that got a grade, I would have gotten an A+++. But that's not really rewarded as a student. And so I think I would just encourage you guys to like think about the extracurriculars more. I was definitely worried about my grades because so many of my CS friends wanted to go get a master's degree or a PhD, or want to go to business school, where grades kind of matter a little bit. And I was really paranoid about that. And I shot myself in the foot and just decided to go the networking path, but I think I got way more value out of it this way. So yeah, just be open to extracurriculars. Don't just focus on the academics. As far as your question on the networking, or was there a question on networking or?
Yeah, kind of. I was just curious what ignited your curiosity in trying to get to know as many people as possible, whether it be through your personal and professional networking or through getting speakers for TEDx Berkeley, which seems, less professional than getting all of these speakers for the CS Undergrad Association. But overall, it's under this umbrella of just trying to learn from as many people as possible. So.
Well, I found that I got more value learning directly from these people than I did from like going to a class at Haas, if I'm just being totally honest. And I knew that, there's this quote of, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And in business, that's very much the case. And I knew that I had a very limited window to take advantage of the fact that I was a Cal undergrad, because everyone wants to talk to a Cal undergrad, as I mentioned earlier. I was worried that after I left Cal, I would no longer have that, that title, and then no one would want to talk to me anymore. So that's why I became obsessed. And also I realized that, at Cal, there weren't that many amazing speakers coming in for some reason. Other than you guys with Noon Series, you guys get the best of the best. But outside of this, my CS undergrad friends were having no exposure to great speakers, and yet they all wanted to talk to the kids. So that's, if you guys if any one of you wanted to bring a speaker program to your major, it would be so easy. Any of you guys could replicate this.
For sure. Okay, thank you so much. That was really comprehensive. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
People often ask me if we pay our speakers. By the way, if you all have some budget concerns, the answer is no.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
anybody can do this.
Not only do I not pay my speakers, I make them buy pizza. And not just any pizza, Zachary's Pizza or cheese board. No garbage from anywhere else. And I say, look, you're doing yourself a favor. You're making your personal brand look better, and you're making your company brand look better. So I framed it in a way that was self-serving for them.
Thanks so much, Veta, for your question. We had some questions on the Q&A, and some of the students aren't able to come in. But one question, you hear a lot about passion. You also hear a lot about superpower. How do you think? How would you define what a superpower is? How would somebody find their superpower?
I think superpower is defined as what comes supernatural. It's just so easy and effortless for you. And likewise, I think. If you think about what is not easy for you, or what doesn't come naturally, then you know what your superpowers are not. And so process of elimination, I think, is actually a good way to approach this. In my case, I was great at networking. So then I realized, okay, that's a superpower. I should lean into that. But could I run a company? Do I actually know how to run a company? Hard to tell until you actually do it. When I got into that, so being a good networker means that I would probably be a good fundraiser. Being a good fundraiser was one of the key criteria for being a good CEO of a venture-backed startup. And then there's hiring, and then there's product building and programming. And since like I wasn't the best programmer, I was like probably bottom quartile in my CS class, I realized, all right, technical skills, not my superpower. Networking, fundraising, most likely my superpower. Networking also means recruiting and hiring people, which also lends itself to the CEO role. So that was kind of it was very obvious to me. And like by my senior year, I instantly knew what I would do. What took me 10 more years to figure out, so probably until only the past 2 years, is that I don't have a superpower for keeping the train on the tracks with the company. Like there's so much BS to handle when you have a company with hundreds of employees. So in inDinero, I grew it to about 250 employees. And I'm getting calls left and right about all these problems because, when you have a company, there are problems like customers complain, employees complain, executives complain. There's always a fire coming up. And I didn't enjoy dealing with it. So even if I was decent or good enough at it, because I didn't love it, that meant that there's no way for it to become a superpower of mine to operate a company at scale. So that's what led me to deciding on my new model, which is, all right, I'm going to hire CEOs to run these companies and then just come up with new ideas for new companies. So starting companies and founding them and getting them funded and hiring the right people to run them, that's my superpower. But it took me 10 years to get here or more. 12 years from when I finished at Cal.
Not such a long time, by the way, but I see from your perspective, it may seem like a long time. Shervin said something interesting when he was talking. He talked about finding people who have the kind of brains that he looks for. Did you hear that? That he's looking for people with a certain kind of brain. What do you think he meant by that? And does it resonate with you also?
Yeah, it resonates with me. I think he's really drawn to unconventional thinkers, people who are willing to go outside the norm, but also think so ambitiously from an impact perspective. Like, how could this change everything? Remember how you talked about oh my God, this is the most exciting time to be a human, and talked about, in 1994 with the internet. He is drawn to people who think about ideas that could change everything, the whole paradigm of human existence. And I think it's really easy to get stuck in this trap. And by the way, I got stuck in this trap for over 10 years of just wanting to build a business that is an easy business that could make money. But, we don't need another Instagram or TikTok competitor. You don't need a better college internship search app. By the way, I built one of those. It was called Internship In, and I got a bunch of PR for that back when I was at Cal. But we don't need another one of those. It's great it's a great practice startup idea, but it won't draw in someone like a Shervin. And so that led me down this journey of, all right, how do I build more interesting, impactful companies that can really help millions of people? And interestingly enough, it's easier to raise money for those bold ideas because people like Shervin are attracted to it. Shervin does not want to fund another boring startup, which everyone else seems to be funding. Hopefully that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. Is there anything that you are looking at right now that you are allowed to talk about that seems interesting to you?
Yeah, right now I am working on, I've got one business called Astonishing Labs, which actually I haven't even talked to Shervin about yet. But I can't wait to talk to him about it because it's a bio life science company. and we fund groundbreaking scientific research that can hopefully change everything in a certain category or field. So for example, our lead scientist, Mike Levin, he's been able to amputate the arms and legs off of adult frogs, which by the way, have no regeneration capability, and fully regrow them back with the fingers moving, with no stem cells and no gene editing. It's using bioelectricity. And actually, if you guys are interested, there's a whole New Yorker article on this. I'll put it in the chat room in case you guys.
That's awesome.
But that's so I have a company there we're just investing in all these crazy technologies, and a lot of stuff under that we can't talk about yet, but will blow your minds when the PR comes out about it.
It's so fascinating because it's so different from some of the things that you have founded. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's you know, I think I saw some questions about how do you transition from one field to another. So Shervin went from, you know, science and medical stuff to tech like companies, like more CS oriented. I did the opposite. I started in CS and now I'm doing some science stuff and also more CSE things as well. And I think that it's just kind of boring to just stay doing the same thing for your entire career. We're going to live longer. Careers are moving faster now. It's not implausible for you to end up having impact in 3, 4, 5 completely different fields. Like you look at Shervin, he also was part of Hyperloop, right? Like totally different, has nothing to do with science or CS. And for me, like I take inspiration from that. I think the same thing.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask Abhay to ask the last question, if you would, Abhay, and then after that we'll post our quiz. Abhay, are you okay asking? You would have to unmute.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for talking to us, and thank you so much for introducing Shervin and bringing him on. I had a question about how you transitioned into the whole pilot situation, and it kind of came like super late in your career. So, was that just something that you were passionate about? You thought that it would be cool, or was it motivated by some, business motives or some professional motives?
Yeah, I always loved flying. Like I played flight simulator at my dad's place when I was a kid. So I was addicted, and then I was at a dinner party with like 6 CEOs at an investor's house, and everyone said, let's all get our pilot licenses. No one did except for me. I went online that night and I bought a Groupon and took an intro flight lesson, and I got the bug. I got totally addicted, got my license in a tiny, 1976 Cessna 152. And I was always worried like the propeller would fall off because it was such an old airplane. And then worked my way up, and, now I fly jet aircraft, and yeah, it's been good.
I feel like, go ahead, Abhay.
Oh, no, I was just saying that's really interesting because I just got my pilot's license with like 3 of my best friends, and that was the whole like reason behind it. I don't get why you got a commercial license. Like, is there any benefit to that as opposed to a private license, or like what's with the commercial license?
Yeah, you need to get your commercial license if you want to fly jets. So I fly my own private jet for fun. And
okay.
Too, hopefully.
That's insane. I hope to be there someday.
Yeah, you gotta have goals to shoot for. I mean, there's one attitude of I'm gonna live a Buddhist monk lifestyle and just minimize my desires. The other way of thinking is I'm gonna have a ridiculous dream board with like my private island and my airplane and my Lamborghinis or whatever. And I think that if you go with the latter approach, it could inspire you to like think through, okay, how do I like build a business that's more valuable so I can actually buy all these things? But both approaches work. You just have to decide what resonates with you more.
Jessica Ma, you are somebody who resonates with everybody. I think it's interesting. It just so happens to be that our passcode tonight is learning and growing, which is exactly what you're talking about. You bring in not only the best speakers to speak with us, but you have incredible insights yourself. Always, as I say, you have a standing invitation. I say, I think on behalf of everybody, thank you. Thank you. You rock.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for having Shervin. And yeah, really grateful for all the years that you've been organizing this, Vicky. And yeah, let me know if I could help you find more great people for next semester.
You can always help. So thank you so much. And thanks for, well, as I say, we take everybody's feedback and I pass that on to you and Shervin, hopefully tomorrow. So maybe by the time he lands, he'll have some feedback. Somebody's asking, I think, still for the, actually, Sukriti, would you do me a favor? Can you make sure that it's on B courses that it's published?
Yeah, I'll just double check.
Thank you so much. Jessica, I'm going to let you get on with your evening. I can't wait to see what's new. I can't wait to see what's happening with Astonishing Labs, and you keep astonishing us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone. Bye for now.
Take care. As Jessica heads out, I'm happy to answer any questions, and hopefully the quiz is working now. It should be learning and growing. Sukriti, is it working now?
Yeah, just give me one sec.
Okay, you guys, I'll stop my share and I'll look for a second, just in case. Lots of love there. And let me just see if I can find why it's not working yet on B courses. Actually, I can't get onto my B courses, believe it or not.
I think it should work now.
Okay, fantastic. Let's take a look at it. And let me go ahead and reshare just in case for everybody. It's learning and growing, all lowercase, and I'll go ahead and reshare. There we go. Wishing everybody a really good night. I want to thank Francesca and Nishi also, excuse me, for Nishi for incredible introductions, and Jessica Ma, and wish Shervin safe travels and hope everybody is doing well. We'll see you not next week because it's Thanksgiving week, but we'll see you the week after with Dave Gilboa and Berkeley Innovation. I think he's now chair. I think you all know better than I do, probably, of innovation, Rich Lyons. And Nishi, actually, some people had asked me about Jessica. Let me know if you'd like to contact Jessica. I will go ahead and reach out to her and see if she wants to share. But here's what I tell everybody. Founders want to be found. Usually their email is their first name at whatever their company name is. So you can also try that.
Awesome. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
And you are certainly welcome. If you all cannot find a talk from before, let me know and I can help you all find it. And wishing everybody a good night as we continue to keep learning and growing. Have a great Thanksgiving. And I will see you all on the 29th, Tuesday, the 29th of November. See you literally with Warby Parker, co-founder, and in conversation with Rich Lyons. Nishi, Francesca, have a good night. Sukriti and Artem, have a good night as well. And Veda, thank you again for your question.
Thank you.
Take care, all.
Thank you so much.